Welcome back to Philosophy and Ethics in Games, the series where I break down the choices in some of my favorite games and figure out which decision is the right one. I'm Josh Bearheart Hawk, and in this episode, we're diving back into TellTale Games' The Walking Dead, this time exploring the Season 1 DLC, 400 Days. In case you missed the previous episodes, I've linked a playlist in the description below. As I continue to break down the series, I'll add new videos to the playlist so you can find them all in one place. 400 Days was a bonus episode of sorts that acted as a bridge between Seasons 1 and Season 2. We're introduced to several characters here that will play a role in Season 2, and we learn a little bit about each of them as we experience a brief moment in their stories. Rather than choosing an episode to play, we're presented with a public message board with post-it notes and missing persons posters. We get to choose which story to play first, and the layout will make more sense once we've seen each backstory. To start with, we hop into the story of Vince. Right away, we hear someone begging for their life as Vince stands over them, a gun pointed toward the source of the voice. As he pulls the trigger, a look of shock appears on his face. We can tell from the expression that his action isn't something he wanted to do, or even something he can believe he's done. As he's running from the scene, we get a brief glimpse of Everett's drugstore. This is a connection to Season 1 and Lee that really resonates when you remember that the first thing we learn about Lee was that he was on his way to prison after murdering someone. You're given the chance to dispose of the gun Vince used, but no matter how you dispose of it, it's still found later, and the next time we see Vince is on a prison bus following his trial and conviction. He's seated between two men, Justin to his rear, and Danny in the seat in front of him. We learn that Danny is on his way to prison as a convicted sex offender, and Justin was sentenced for running a pyramid scheme in which he stole millions from people. As the three men are discussing their present situation, one of the prisoners near the front of the bus attacks the prisoner in the seat in front of him, prompting the guard to pull his gun. When the man doesn't let go of his captive, the guard fires and both men fall silent. Even with the guard's intervention, the prisoner that was being attacked dies, and now there are two bodies to contend with. Before that situation can be fully resolved, screaming from outside the bus draws everyone's attention, and we see what appears to be people attacking each other in the highway median. But the threat doesn't stay outside the window, as the prisoner that had been strangled comes back to life, biting the guard before turning its attention to Vince, Justin, and Danny. The prisoners are able to recover the guard's gun and take care of the immediate threat, but the calm doesn't last as a group of zombies make their way onto the bus, held back only thanks to the gate at the front. Escaping through the back would be possible if not for the ankle chains keeping the men tied in place. The keys to the chains are missing from the guard's body, and it quickly becomes clear that there is only one way to escape. The chain is hooked through loops in each prisoner's ankle bracelet, with the beginning of the chain being hooked to Justin's ankle and the end being hooked to Danny. You have to make a decision. The only way you're getting off the bus is to shoot one of the other prisoners' ankles. And this is where the backgrounds come into play. Do you shoot Justin, the scammer who took advantage of people to the tune of $100 million, or do you shoot Danny, who is convicted of sexual misconduct with someone who is possibly underage? At this point, there's no way to know the full extent of what is happening in the world at large. All any of the prisoners know is that things are going downhill quickly for them. If they don't get off the bus, it's likely they'll all die. Morally speaking, there's no right answer as we don't know the full details of any of the men's crimes, and we don't know what's going to happen. Escaping with either man into the arms of authorities who will just throw us back into prison would be the best case scenario. But what if there is no more authority? Vince would have no way to know that this event was the beginning of the end of civilization as he knows it. Assuming the worst, the best solution would be to shoot off Danny's leg. From what we know, it sounds like he did something really bad. Something that would almost certainly make him a liability in any group that we might find ourselves in the worst case scenario. No one is going to want a person who is a threat to children in their group. That being said, it's likely Vince wouldn't put much thought into the situation. He, like most people, would assume the worst regardless of Danny's actual crime. If someone has to be left behind to save yourself, Danny would be the right choice given what we know. Shooting Danny's foot off, Vince escapes through the back of the bus with Justin, and the two men disappear into a time jump. Several weeks later, but in the same location, we meet Wyatt. He's riding shotgun in a car being driven by his companion, Eddie. They are speeding down the highway, attempting to escape some kind of altercation where Eddie shot someone. As they're wondering whether they've gotten away, a pair of headlights coming from a pickup truck appear in the rearview mirror, and you soon find yourself shooting at some unknown attacker as they chase you and Eddie through the dense fog. A couple of well-placed shots cause the pickup to veer off the road, and Eddie winds up turning down a back road a little further down the freeway in hopes of losing whoever it was that was following them. After a brief argument about the headlights, Eddie hits something and pulls the car over. He thinks he hit a person, but neither man is sure what it was. After a game of rock, paper, scissors, Eddie leaves the car to go check as Wyatt climbs in the driver's seat in case a quick getaway is needed. Before Eddie returns, Wyatt finds himself face to face with the driver of the pickup truck, who's managed to circle around and find them in the dark. The struggle doesn't last long, and Wyatt drives off into the night, leaving Eddie to an unknown fate. The question here, though, is whether they should have stopped at all. While Vince was only on day one of what could be the end of civilization, Wyatt and Eddie are over a month into the chaos. They've had time to see just how bad things are, and they could be more confident that life isn't going back to what it was. When you know the dead are up and walking around, and you know that you're in the middle of escaping some kind of a bad situation, stopping to get out of the car in the dead of night with heavy fog making it impossible to see anything is the wrong move if you want to stay alive. This is yet another example of shifting moral lines. It would be considered immoral by most people in the modern world to hit what appears to be a person with your car and just take off. We've all seen stories in the news involving hit-and-run accidents, and it isn't hard to condemn someone who left another person to die in that circumstance. But in a situation where society no longer exists, where you are more likely to see a corpse walking around in the dead of night than a living person, you have to protect yourself. Maybe it was a person you hit, but even if it was, there's a likelihood that they were killed on impact and might just eat you alive when you go to check on them. Nearly 140 days later, we meet a young man named Russell. He's walking alone along a stretch of backcountry highway when a pickup truck coming from behind him catches him off guard. You can choose to stand your ground or try to hide. Trying to hide provides an Easter egg from the game devs in the form of an old friend from Season 1 Episode 3. But no matter what you do, you wind up hitching a ride with the driver of the pickup, Nate. The conversation in the truck seems to circle around Nate's desire for female companionship more than anything else, and he demonstrates a lack of any kind of empathy when he stops the truck and rolls down the passenger window to let a zombie reach in and harass Russell. Getting through that, the pair wind up at the gas station that all of the stories to this point have been circling around, and they're climbing out with plans to search for some supplies when someone opens fire from inside the building. It's clear someone wants them to leave, but Nate in particular seems intent on sticking around. They make their way around the building and get inside, finding their assailant to be an older man who was just defending himself and his injured wife following an earlier attack. Nate is intent on killing them and taking whatever he can, and you have to decide whether to go along with him or leave. Morally speaking, even 184 days into the collapse of society, the right thing to do here is leave. The man and his wife were only trying to protect themselves when they shot at you, and killing them to steal their supplies is wrong. You could argue that the old man was wrong for opening fire without warning, but from what we can tell, the attack in which his wife was injured was recent, and he had every reason to think the pair were there to finish what had been started only hours or maybe even minutes before. He was scared and trying to protect what he had left. A month later, 220 days into the end of the world, we meet Bonnie. She's a recovering drug addict, brought back from the brink by Leland and his wife Dee. The trio have been out scavenging, and Dee has found a bag that winds up being more trouble than it's worth when a group of people starts chasing them through the dark, rainy night. We find out through dialogue that Bonnie and Leland have a romantic connection, and an off-the-cuff remark by Leland, calling Bonnie darling just before the chase begins, leads to an angry Dee forcing Leland to leave Bonnie, who is shot in the shoulder, behind. The chase ends in a cornfield, with Bonnie hiding behind a tractor and taking on what she thinks is one of the people chasing them by swinging a piece of rebar through the darkness and smacking them in the face. But it wasn't one of the strangers she hit, it was Dee. There's a brief chance to talk to Dee before she dies, and when Leland shows up, you have to decide whether to be honest with him about what happened or lie. Honesty is usually the best policy in any situation, but being completely honest in this circumstance could be detrimental to your survival. Maybe Leland would understand, but there's also the chance he attacks you in a moment of anger over Dee's death. Trying to obfuscate, saving the truth for later, doesn't work though, and Bonnie has to flee the field as the group that's chasing them closes in. Leland stays behind, and we can hear a gunshot signaling his end as Bonnie escapes into the night. And this is where I want to point out that there are so many other options and choices to make in this series. I've noticed the occasional call out about other choices in the comments, and I definitely hear you. My goal with this series is to play out the decisions that make the most sense to me ethically and morally. I want to focus on why a decision makes sense and how I got to that conclusion. But that means that I also leave out a lot of the branches and options that exist, as those options are only known to us, the player, and wouldn't really be known to the characters in the moment. Once we get through the series, covering each episode of every season, I'm going to spend some time exploring the different choices and diving into the branches the devs provided, as well as discussing what other options I would have liked to see in the game. For instance, I would have loved to see some more interaction with Ben and a choice that would have allowed him to become a long-term member of the group. I also want to hear about the choices you made in each episode in the comments. The idea behind this series is to really think about the decisions we make and the process that drives those decisions. Sometimes we think that we're seeing the whole picture when we're really only seeing part of it, and seeing things from someone else's perspective might help us make a better decision. Getting back into the episode, we find the sun rising on day 236. We're back at the gas station, and a small group has fortified it and settled in. They've managed to start growing food and even have a security system consisting of zombies tied up in the back. While the main focus of the story might be the sisters Shell and Becca, it's also interesting to note the appearance of some familiar faces. Boyd, Clive, and Joyce, all members of the Cancer Survivors group we saw in Season 1, Episode 4, are back. None of them has changed very much, but we do learn that they lost Vernon and the boat at some point. As Shell, you find yourself making some small dialogue choices involving Becca and trying to decide if she can help with things like inspecting the guns for the group. But the biggest decision comes when a man is caught trying to steal supplies. The group is divided, and you wind up being the deciding vote on whether to let him go or to kill him. What's the right call? Letting him go would seem to be the right choice. Yes, he was trying to steal from you, but he wasn't successful, and maybe you just need a bit more security in the future. Stealing in the modern world doesn't normally result in the death penalty, as we discussed in prior videos. But as we also know, stealing in the world of The Walking Dead means putting the very lives of the people that you're stealing from at risk. When Ben was stealing supplies back in episode 3, it not only put the group at risk, but also wound up indirectly causing the death of multiple people. Food and medicine are in short supply, and the very survival of the group depends on stretching that supply. But unlike Ben, this thief is an outsider. We not only have to consider the fact that he was stealing from the group, but that he could very well have a group of his own. Letting him go could mean he returns later with friends. His friends could come looking for him, but the risk of that playing out is less than the risk of him bringing them back to where he knows a group is with supplies. Keeping him alive and holding him as a prisoner, or trying to integrate him into the group, has its own set of problems. He would need to be watched constantly, at least in the short term. He's also injured, meaning he would need to use some of the aforementioned short supply of medical goods, and he would be another mouth to feed. Looking at it morally, and considering the survival of the group to be paramount, the best choice here is to end his life. But that choice comes with consequences of its own. 33 days later, we find the group in a much darker place. Several people in the group are struggling with the decision to kill the man, and one member of the group, Stephanie, has had enough. She tried to leave, which might not have been too bad, except for the fact that she was trying to take a bunch of supplies with her. And now you have another big decision and a question to answer. The decision revolves around whether to end Stephanie's life or leave the group yourself. Stephanie's actions put the welfare of the group, including your sister Becca, at risk. She was taking medical supplies, food, and seeds and trying to sneak away. The de facto leader of the group, Roman, has locked her up in a trailer, and he tells you that this time it's your turn to do the shooting. While the choice to either kill Stephanie or leave, stealing the RV you've been staying in and driving off, is an important one, there is a question that this situation raises that's even bigger. Is being part of a group really worth it? We've seen the scenario play out several times now, going all the way back to the motor inn in the first couple of episodes of Season 1. Things start out okay, then someone tries to take control of the group and dictate things, and it all falls apart. People disagree on how to do things. They fail to compromise, and before long the group is no more. We'll see other examples of this moving into future seasons of the game, but would rebuilding society after something like the zombie virus we see in The Walking Dead really be doomed to fail? The rise and fall of cultures and empires can be seen throughout human history. It's not uncommon to see a nation rise, only to then watch it rip itself apart because the denizens and leaders can't agree on one thing or another. It's the struggle between power and freedom. Let's look at the fight between Kenny and Lily as an example. Both thought their ideas and plans were the best for the group. They fought tooth and nail to get their way and refused to compromise on anything. Crawford fell because the self-appointed leader was making decisions he thought would help the group prosper without taking anyone else's opinion or thoughts into account. Had he been willing to compromise to provide some form of hope to the group, they might have been able to make it through. And that's the key. Hope. When we first meet the group at the gas station, they have hope for a better future. They're planting their own food, talking about maybe having talent shows, and envisioning a time where they might thrive instead of just survive. When the stranger enters the camp and steals supplies, they're hit with the realization that what they have is more fragile than they knew, and measures to protect it have to be put in place. Roman starts running things like a dictator, and the hope that they had is slowly sapped as the days wear on. For a society to work in the long term, the people living in the group need to have a good balance between hope and security. The gas station group had that balance when they were able to do things like play guitar and laugh. But when the hope was taken away by the new rules Roman implemented, and the group started to feel less in control of their situation and more fearful, things started to go downhill fast. I'll be digging deeper into the fall of society in future episodes because this is a theme that we see over and over in The Walking Dead. But for now, it's important to look at what happens after the decision to kill Stephanie. Killing Stephanie makes the most sense in the given context, only because staying where there is food and supplies in the moment for Shell and Becca is the best idea. Choosing to take the RV and leave would mean leaving behind things that could help them stay alive, even as bad as things might look with Roman in charge. Their best option would be to stick it out in the short term and try to land in the best possible position when the group finally does fall apart. And the group does fall apart. The next time we see Shell and Becca is on day 400, when they, along with a new group of survivors comprised of people from the other stories, are approached by a woman named Tavia, who claims to be from a community where they can find shelter and safety. But we'll have to wait for Season 2 to find out more about that. What did you think of 400 Days? While many people seem to be on the fence about it when it first released, I actually liked the dive into some new stories. The journey through various parts of the fall of civilization, through a diverse set of eyes and situations, was one that I enjoyed more than I expected. Next week we'll be getting into Season 2, and I can't wait to talk about some of the more interesting choices you can make, and the return of a fan favorite character. I'm also working on a new series where I dive into the individual characters and discuss their qualities and shortcomings. I put a list of names to vote for on my community tab, and Lee came out on top as the first one I'll be covering. But I'll be getting into them all in time, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of those. Speaking of subscribing, I want to thank you all for helping me pass the 1,000 subscriber milestone. When I started this series, I didn't expect so many people to enjoy it so much, and I definitely didn't expect to hit 1,000 subscribers. You've all also been amazing at leaving thought-provoking and inspiring comments, and I want to thank you for giving me your thoughts and suggestions. For anyone that might be interested, I have a Patreon, and now channel memberships, where I share these videos early alongside some additional content and behind-the-scenes kind of stuff. I'll leave a link to the Patreon in the description, and while I'm still new to the whole channel membership thing, I think there's a join button for anyone who wants to sign up for that. I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.